So welcome everyone to Sanctuary Online, where our Lenten journey this year is it's called the Taste of Self. And the Taste of Self comes from an 18-session curriculum that's actually called Creating a Life That Matters. And we're hoping through this test of a taste of self to actually put Creating a Life That Matters fully online later this fall or next winter. So I know last week I kind of gave a little bit of history of what Creating a Life That Matters is. And what we're doing really honestly is we call it that it's a conversational journey experienced in community. And if any of your feedback forms were accurate to us last week, you loved the conversation. So we got so many comments about how enjoyable the breakout rooms were and people just honestly getting to know each other a bit and sharing their real authentic selves. So we've made sure that we have give you a good chunk of time in the breakouts again tonight. Thank you to everyone who was able to fill out a feedback form and help us out. So we are beginning let's see, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you a little bit. And what we love to do is we would love to see your faces. So part of what Sanctuary does is try to create community. And so one of the nice things is if you put yourself in gallery view, you can see everybody. Peter mentioned last week how enjoyable it was to be out and about in a group of wonderful, like-minded people, even though he was in the comfort and safety of his own home there. But so that's one of the things we love to do is to create that community. We also, if you haven't done it yet, we'd love you to open your chat box, type in again your first and last name, your email address and phone number, and maybe where you're calling in from. And part of that is because what we're trying to do is make sure we have proper email addresses for all of you, because midweek we send out an email and that has a little bit of information. It also has maybe the homework from this session or the pre-work for next session. Sometimes it's just short reading like there was this week. And so if we have your email address and you open it, it's just a wonderful way to continue that communication. Again, if we have your cell phone number, we go ahead Tuesday afternoon and offer you a little text function to remind you that it is indeed Tuesday and we'd love to see you here. There were a few of you that let us know that you didn't get the email that we sent midweek, and that would have had the pre-reading for tonight. So Barb is going to put the pre-reading in the chat box as a file that you can open or download. It's only about a half a page. And if you can't get to that, don't worry about it. We'll obviously get that to you post haste. And if you didn't get an email from us midweek, would you please just put that in the chat box also? And afterwards, we will connect the dots with you and make sure we figure out where that went wrong, okay? Every email that we sent out, we showed it sent. We didn't show them all as opened, but we'll work with you on that. So I'd love to introduce you to our team. Last week, I was blessed to kick things off and facilitate a course called Brilliant, Gorgeous, Fabulous. And we talked about our multi-dimensional selves, how we are aware of our physical body, how last week we became aware of our emotional body and the connection between the two. And then we also talked about our energetic bodies, how we actually have a presence, an energetic presence that moves out, most will say around 30 feet from our physical bodies. And we talked about aligning our physical body, our emotional body, and our energetic body to have real power and breakthrough and health. And Terry's going to speak to that a little bit tonight and link this class with our last class. Terry Steed Pierce is our facilitator tonight in a course called Powerful Beyond Measure. And we're going to ask ourselves the question, Terry's going to ask you the question, who are you and who are you not? And then we'll chat about journeying along with 4 yogas. I want to invite you now to next week, next Tuesday, where Lily Brock will be bringing us a course called Under the Waterline. And this is a powerful journey of discovery to notice how our behaviors, those things above the waterline that we can see and people can see, are actually shaped by our thoughts and feelings, which are shaped by even deeper our beliefs and values, which are actually shaped by our unmet needs. It's a very powerful evening. And to finish us for the month, actually for the 4 weeks of the month, is Ken Martin, our course called Keeping Body and Soul Together. And this is going to be, again, a powerful dialogue and reflection, and it regards the reintegration of our spirituality and our sexuality. So that is our course and our facilitators, our facilitation team. Behind the scenes, though, is Barb Crabtree. God bless. Barb is our communicator and our database diva. So all things communication, all things working out, all registrations and hooking through the website. Yeah, thanks, James and Dean. Absolutely, Barb. We so appreciate you. And then Cheryl is our breakout room queen. So Cheryl is behind the scenes. More applause coming. More applause as we try to put you properly into breakouts where these amazing conversations can occur. So without more ado, I just want to say tonight, our facilitator, we are so blessed that Terry is bringing the course to you tonight. Terry actually attended CLM 10 years ago in 2011 and became a facilitator in 2012. And we were counting the courses, the people you've put through CLM in your history with us, Terry, and I think we are well over 100. So you're in good hands tonight, my friends. Terry walking us through this amazing journey through Who Am I Not, with Care of the Soul, and also with our 4 yogas. So the way things are going to work tonight, real quickly, is we've done this. This is kind of the welcome. And again, as you notice, we may have changed a few of your names. It's nothing personal. It's just to make sure we know who you are so we can put you in the proper breakout rooms. In a minute, we're going to just chat about our homework, how we did some of your journaling from last session. And then reminding you that Care of the Soul, there was a short reading as a pre-work for tonight, just so you'll understand the teaching a little better. And then we're going to go into a goal and a scripture and quote. And if it's okay with you, I'm just going to be grabbing names out of boxes and asking you to read the slide that I have in front of you. Okay, so we'll do that, especially the quote. The quote is kind of special tonight. And so we'll have multiple readers, about 8 readers this evening. Then we'll go into our primary teaching from Thomas More's Care of the Soul. And from that teaching, which is only going to be about 10 minutes long or so, we'll put you into your large group. So you'll go into your large group breakout rooms, small group breakout rooms. And then we'll come out, have a large group debrief, and there'll be a secondary teaching, at which time we will go into homework. And then many of you remember, as we ended last week, we end each week with our song, How Could Anyone? And we'll play that while we offer you a paper body closing activity. That should take us to about 90 minutes. Last week we were right on time. And then we told you we were going to kind of keep the room open, the Zoom room. I turned the recording off, which really makes me sad because we had one of the greatest conversations for the next 30 minutes. So the evening, last 90 minutes, if you'd like to stay on a little bit better and kind of hang out in class, I think I kicked everybody out of the classroom last week around 10 after the hour. They just wouldn't stop sharing and talking. So we'll do the same thing tonight. And that's an optional portion, but just know that you're welcome. And especially if you have any administrative questions or issues, it's a great time to get them addressed right there after class. Without further ado, I'm wondering if Edie, would you jump out and read our session goal tonight?
I'm holding my space bar. I'm trainable.
You're so trainable and wonderful.
Our session goal tonight is by the end of this session, we will begin to understand the giftedness our integrated, authentic selves bring into the service of the sacred.
Thank you, my friend. And each week we have a scripture also. And James or Dean, would one of you gentlemen like to read tonight's scripture? It's from the Message, 1 Corinthians.
God's various gifts are handed out everywhere, but they all originate in God's Spirit. God's various ministries are carried out everywhere, but they all originate in God's Spirit.
God's various expressions of power are in action everywhere, but God is behind it all. Each person is given something to do that shows who God is. Everyone gets on it. Everyone benefits.
All kinds of things are handed out by the Spirit, and to all kinds of people. The variety is wonderful. You are Christ's body. That's who you are. You must never forget.
All right, unmute and appreciate that because that was not rehearsed. Thank you, gentlemen.
That's so good.
An antiphonal reading. I couldn't have asked for more. Thanks, guys. It's so good to see you here. And normally our quote is also short, but tonight we're going to work with the quote a little bit from Marianne Williamson. So Linda Leenders, would you please be reader one tonight and just offer this this first portion?
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate.
And each time you hear this, I know many of you have heard the poem in its entirety. Just kind of breathe in a sentence at a time. Yvette, I wonder if you'd read this next for us. Yvette, you're on mute, baby.
I'm holding down the button. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now perfectly.
Okay. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us.
Thank you. Evan, could you read this next one? Spacebar down.
We ask ourselves, who are we to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous?
And Joan, want to read this one?
Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world.
Thank you. And Brian?
There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around.
Thank you. Onetta.
We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us.
Thank you. John.
Not just in some of us, it's in everyone.
And Kristen?
And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same.
So again, I know many of you have probably heard that poem in its entirety before. Thank you for opening our teaching piece. And I now, with great love and honor, turn you over to Reverend Terry Pierce.
Good evening. I'm grateful to be here. I want us to sit with the poem for a minute. I know you've probably heard it, or maybe parts of it sound familiar, but just consider for a moment, did it hit you differently this time? Did it help you align with your integrated, authentic self? Did it ping you, realizing that perhaps you're not walking in that, in your most energetic, spiritual, physical, emotional self? Just take a moment and we'll reflect on that for just a moment. Now I want to call to your attention our reading, which served as your homework for tonight, Thomas More's Care for the Soul. Here, Moore mentioned that writers are taught to write what they know about. That same advice, he said, applies to the quest for the power of the soul. Be good, he said, at what you're good at. Our scripture lesson reminds us that we are all gifted to do something for the world's common good. Gifted, in fact, for greatness. Though we are each gifted, many of us, Moore says, spend time and energy trying to be something that we're not. And this is a move, he suggests, that goes against the soul. We often make these decisions based on other people's reactions to our own giftedness, right? How many of us were told as children that little boys couldn't be ballerinas and little girls couldn't be rocket scientists? We often believed the lies they told us, and in turn didn't pursue what we felt inclined or gifted or passionate to do in this world, all because somebody said we couldn't or we shouldn't. Who I can relate to this. I hope you can. Actually, I hope you can't. But suppose that we want to be powerful beyond measure, as our quote from Marianne Williamson suggested. In that case, I believe we must be integrated in our multidimensional selves that Joby talked about last week, and then learn how not to play small in the world because of others' reactions to our giftedness. We read in this quote earlier, there's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. Let me give you a small, brief example about this. My wife has a very large presence. Some of you may know her. And when she walks into a room, many people have told her that she is intimidating. And she reminds him of the difference. She said, I'm not intimidating. You are intimidated. It's not the same thing. No need, you see, to shrink yourself so others don't feel so small, right? Instead, we were born to manifest the glory of God that is within us. And we were each meant to shine, not just some of us, all of us. Yet too often we've dimmed our light because we feared we were inadequate, as our scripture quote, as our session quote reminded us. And more likely, we fear that we are really powerful beyond measure. So as we take this journey, this taste of self, to rediscover relationship with ourselves, I believe it behooves us to think back about how we might have played small in the world and then in turn not served it. So I want you to think back on your own life. What have you said yes to doing that in turn made you say no to something else, something that would likely have allowed your light to shine more brightly? Perhaps you said no to this because your life circumstances didn't leave room for the yes at that particular time. Can you think back to what brought you to that decision to say no to something you really wanted to do, and then yes to something that wasn't really in proper alignment with your full self? Perhaps it was the death of a parent that caused you to change course. Maybe your partner lost a job and you had to move back home to help with the family. Whatever it was, your own decision, or if it was a decision that was made for you, you ended up not being where you knew you wanted to be and perhaps were supposed to be. And yet, even while planted there, you still bloomed where you were planted. But your life just wasn't as fulfilling as you would like, or as you would know that it could be. Who have you said yes to being that didn't serve who you knew you were meant to be? And then furthermore, I'd add that many of us have spent our lives trying to put our square selves into a round hole, and then we end up living inauthentically. Ken Martin calls this our codependent imposter, whom we've created to keep us perhaps safe in a world that doesn't accept our unique giftedness. And so when this happens, we end up saying yes to that which we know isn't our authentic self. And then we have to say no to our fully aligned self. right? So let me tell you a story from my own life. I knew that God called me to ministry as a teenager. I was probably 16, 17 years old. And I understood at that moment profoundly that God wanted to use me somehow. I wasn't clear then on the how God would use me, but later through my years of study and learning and developing, I would discover that God had indeed called me to pastor. But here's the caveat. I grew up in the Baptist church, the Southern Baptist church more precisely. And so I headed off to a Baptist college and majored in religion, and recognizing there's no use for a degree in religion without a master's degree, I headed immediately to a Southern Baptist seminary. 3 years later, at the age of 25, an MDiv with languages was conferred upon me, and yet I was still unable to even use it. A stranger in a strange land, you might say. Why? Because as a Baptist and a female in a denomination that didn't agree that women could be called of God, I had 2 strikes against me. Oh, and I had come out while in seminary, which, by the way, I do not recommend. So now as a lesbian, that was strike 3, I'm out, right? There was no place where I could be fully aligned as my authentic self in the world to express what I understood my giftedness to be. Therefore, I spent the next 16 years, 1 month and 23 days, but who's counting, in corporate America, because the world and my home church said that I couldn't be whom I knew God had called me to be. And yet, amid that corporate journey, I discovered MCC in 1994. Praise God, it saved my life. And then by 2007, I stopped living as that codependent imposter and began my work as a pastor within metropolitan community churches. After 13 years, during that time, I pastored 5 churches prior to moving to Florida to pastor here. And then fast forward another 9 years. I'm not sure how I'm still only 25 and have done all this, but anyway, but all that time, which can often feel wasted, and yet all of those experiences prepared me to live into that calling on the night of June the 12th, 2016, when Haight walked into a gay nightclub called Pulse, which is 1.4 miles from the church that I pastor here in Orlando. After all those years, 25 to be exact, I found the reward for finally living my authentic self as I could step up and offer healing, help, and hope to my community as an open, unapologetically queer female pastor to the LGBTQ plus community that had just experienced the most horrific act of gun violence in the United States up until that point. This tragedy ended up taking 49 lives in a matter of seconds and injured about 63 others in that same gay nightclub located in the heart of Orlando, otherwise known as the happiest, read gayest place on earth. And yet that week has defined my ministry since then. Nothing has been the same since. And I feel like I am walking in the world as my most authentic, aligned self because of all of those years of preparation and not being who I knew I was now prepared for that Esther moment, for such a time as this. God could use my entire background, including my time of saying no to the authentic me and the years of living as my authentic self to get me to that most intense week of my life. 3 days after the Pulse tragedy, community and faith leaders were invited to the mayor's press conference where folks from all faiths offered their condolences and shared their beliefs that each religious tradition encouraged love of God, the God of their understanding, and love for their neighbor. And as you might well imagine, I was the only female and of course the only LGBTQ plus person up there. And I was the next to the last minister that was called upon to speak. And when I walked up there, my aligned, albeit tearful self spoke. and not to those, as my colleagues had done, to those gathered in front of us, but I spoke to those who were standing behind me, men of every faith tradition. You know, I spoke to those who had never really offered support, but indeed condemnation to the LGBTQ plus community all those years prior. And yet they took the time that day to espouse their religious ideal of love that they had never really shared with our community before. So with that understanding and awareness, I encouraged each of them to invite us, meaning all LGBTQ plus people of faith, all faiths, to the table. You see, I finally refused to play small or shrink this time, even when they didn't embrace me as part of their world. And even though I'm sure they hoped I would, it's unlikely that anybody had ever taken them to task in this kind of arena before in front of lots of press and cameras. Saints, we were each born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. And that one day, I allowed my light to shine unapologetically. I refused to be someone I was not any longer. They got the real, authentic, aligned me that day. In Thomas More's Care for the Soul, he said, considering who you are not, we may find the surprising revelation of who we are. I find my true, authentic, perfectly aligned self that difficult day. Perhaps you have an example in your own life when you have had to say no to your authentic self to feel safe in the world, and it cost you to be your inauthentic self, to be your authentic self. For example, what did you want to be growing up that the world, your family, your church, your synagogue, your mosque, your community, your parents, your pastor told you that you couldn't be? Take a few moments to consider who you are not, so that you may find the surprising revelation of who you authentically are. And then we're going to put you into small groups of 4 to discuss this with the others there. And then I want you to answer these questions together. And I would recommend that you take a picture of the slide that Joe is showing, so that when you get into your small groups, you'll know the questions that we're asking you. And remind you to enjoy this time together in your small group conversation. And please choose someone to manage the time so that every person in the group gets an opportunity to share, and to make sure that you get through each of the questions given. And then if you'll pick a spokesperson to report out if there's any time for that at the end of our breakout session. And just remember to take a picture of this. So here are your questions. Definitely, we want you to get through the first 2 for sure. When you were growing up, what did you want to be? Everybody answer that one. And then go back around the room. When you were growing up, what did you want to be that someone, whether it be family, teacher, church, community, said you couldn't be? And then if you get through those questions, do the real work of sharing. Don't skip over that. Feel free to engage in the next questions that you see listed there. Number 3 says, what have I said yes to that gobbled up all of my time, such that I had to say no to something that would have really made my heart sing? And if you get to number 4, what could I say no to now so that I can say yes to that which will make my heart sing? We'll have you jump into your breakout groups, and then we'll come back in just a few minutes.
So Terry, we're going to actually give him a moment.
Okay.
I'd love to give you just a moment. I think the conversations will be even more rich if we do take just about 3 or 4 minutes, and go ahead and, just like Terry said, ask yourself these questions. And if you want to jot them down a little bit, especially number 1 and 2, and we're going to give you a little bit of quiet time to do that before Cheryl opens up the breakout rooms and sends you all off. Okay, just a moment. just another moment. And again, when you were growing up, what did you want to be? And then was there something that you wanted to be that an authority figure said that you couldn't be? And moving a little forward into maybe your adult life, you know, what have you said yes to that has just taken you kind of like Terry down a path that you knew maybe that wasn't the path that you would have the most joy, right? And yet the circumstances of life often give us good reasons to make those choices. And we are not calling them or that part of your journey bad. We're calling it just a little off path. And yet the powerful question today to ask, is there something in your life that you could say no to? Adjust that sail a tad that would allow you to say yes to something that truly would make your heart sing, that would truly put you on path. I'm going to have Cheryl put you into breakout rooms, but I want to just remind you of something that really worked last week, again, from our feedback forms. Terry had a great idea. If you weren't able to print this off last week through the email that I gave to you, that you were sent, you can take a picture of it with your phone so you know what the questions are. And once you get into your rooms, we're going to give you a full 15 minutes in your rooms, a full 15 minutes. And so please make sure, I mean, some of us, I'll put my hand up, I'm an oversharer. I would start to answer the question first, and I could be talking at minute 13. Okay, that's just how I roll. We're going to ask folks that are like that to maybe manage your oversharing and encourage folks who are undersharers who would love to listen to for all 15 minutes, right? And just challenge yourself, whichever, wherever on that spectrum you fall. And just please make sure that in that 15 minutes, we've only put 4 of you in a room, 3 or 4 of you in a room. So there should be time for each person to share. And there won't really be a debrief out. So you don't need to select a spokesperson or something. We will have a debrief on the other side, but you don't necessarily have to have a presentation of what you talked about tonight when you're done with the breakout rooms. So a timer, consciousness, shared space. And Cheryl's also going to send you little broadcast messages that will come gently across the top of your screen that will say 10 minutes so far, 5 minutes left, 2-minute warning. And that way you can make sure you're getting through as many questions as you want to, and also that everyone's had a chance to share. So if that's good, Cheryl, I'm going to let you pop them into the breakout rooms. For most of you, I'll just remind you, if you had a breakout room set, we've left you in that breakout room if you've chosen that. For many others of you, we left 1 or 2 people in the same breakout room as last week, just so you're not seeing all brand new people every time. But please go ahead and introduce yourself and a short introduction before you get into the questions. Cheryl, they are all yours, my friend, my love, my bride. And as they go into those rooms, I'm going to go ahead and pause our recording. Cheryl, you might have to pause our recording now because you are the host. Oh, I can do it. And Kathy, welcome back from your breakout rooms, everyone.
I wasn't trained to do that. I hit the wrong button. I didn't know what to do.
You know what, Kathy? You are fine. There's the only wrong button is leave meeting, which sometimes people do at the breakout. No, I wouldn't say I've ever done that, but maybe a friend has. Okay.
Hey, group.
I'll find you on the board.
Yeah, not gorgeous faces.
We need more time.
Oh my goodness. Is that you, Yvette? Goodness. We need more time. I'm going to put a slide up.
Check back time tomorrow. We'll be good. No.
Yeah, you guys have a set meeting. I'm just going to put a slide up after the breakouts that says we need more time. And I'll just put it up there. You can all say, yeah, she's got this. Oh my goodness, Terry, they're all yours. They are all yours this week. They were mine last week. God love them.
So everybody's back because I can't see all that. So I want to make sure.
I think they're all
I
back.
can't either.
All right. So I hope you had a meaningful conversation with your group, and I hope you were able to discover some things about yourself and about each other that allowed you to kind of be clear on who you were meant to be and how you've found a way maybe to operate in your more aligned self. And so I'm sure many of you have some examples about how you've been able to do that. And so I wanted to first ask some friends of mine, Collis or Wanda, could one of you briefly share how you've managed to become clear on how you found a way to operate in your more fully aligned self than in your inauthentic self? Would one of you be willing to do that for us tonight?
Yes, I will. Hi, Stylist, everybody. There's so much about Reverend Terry's story that mirrors my own in so many ways. We share a lot of the same path, but through a lot of quiet time and reflection, I was able to really revisit and invigorate a call to ministry for myself over the last few years. And I left a 20-year career in pharmaceutical, biologics, and medical devices to be able to come back into life that's more aligned with who I feel I'm called to be. And, it has been an interesting journey. And one of the most difficult parts of that is leaving behind those parts of yourself that you identified with so much. Like when somebody introduces themselves to you, most of the time it's, hey, who are you and what do you do for a living? Not who are you as a person. And so really owning who I am as a human first, rather than defaulting to the things that I've done, has been really empowering to me, because I am, first of all, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a daughter, a friend, an aunt, all of those things. And so those are some of the ways that I found for myself to live more aligned. So thanks for letting me share.
I knew you would have stories because I know you actually, and I'm grateful that you were willing to share. I know when we were doing some of our work to get prepared for this, Ken, you shared a person that may also have a similar story of an awakening and moving more into their aligned self. Could you introduce them perhaps?
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, Jordan, but you're the person that I was talking about, because I know that you've made some really significant moves and changes in your life to be able to be as fully a person of service to the world as you can possibly be with your many, many gifts. Would you take just a moment and speak to?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say it's been an interesting road, Uncle Ken, and especially with myself and my partner. 2 years ago, Selena and I, we actually both quit our jobs in corporate America, and we took a year on the road, traveling through Latin America, doing some work with wildlife and conservation. And that really led Selena to where she's at right now, which is the University of Pennsylvania Veterinary School. So she's in her first year of veterinary studies, and it's been incredible for her. Definitely for her, growing up as a first generation daughter of immigrants, the idea of following your heart and changing, leaving a lucrative career in corporate America behind was quite a risk. And so we as Americans, we're taught to, free spirit and go chase your heart. But for her family, it was a very big sacrifice. So, but she's much happier now and fulfilled, and God is opening up amazing doors. And this summer, for example, she's going to work for the National Institute of Health in Washington, D.C. She got a call from the CDC. And so there's a lot of opportunities and doors opening up. And myself, I have some ministry going with immigrants and being an advocate in the migrant community here in the Philadelphia area. So praise God for giving us the strength and the support of Sanctuary to do a ministry like this.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joy.
Yes, thank you.
And Terry, we've actually got room or time for a couple more. I'm wondering if there's anybody else that, after listening to the stories and listening to your conversations, maybe filling out the questions, has had a little bit of a shift to an awareness of living a more aligned life. Edie, are you having your hand up, girl? There you go.
Yes, I'm having my hand up.
Awesome.
So Darcel and I had, stories that harken very much to what Terry experienced, which was in Darcel's case, and the kids complain about this, on career day, it's, do you want to be a lawyer? Do you want to be a cop? Do you want to be a firefighter? And when she was little, she wanted to be a firefighter. And of course, what did she get told? No, that's not something little girls don't do that. And, she eventually, we're doing what she's doing now, working with having a chance to work with Adam Schiff. She's enjoying, but there was sort of this hierarchical male resistance along the way, and I experienced the same. I already had my private pilot's license by the time I was a freshman in college, but the restrictions on women's place in operational aviation in the military wasn't, there was quite the quota. I think 6 women in ROTC nationally got to go to navigator training, and I was not going to be one of them. And so both of us ran into male resistance along the way about what we were doing. And Darcel had some trouble with her union. I think my experience is that women are so community oriented that operating in a hierarchy that men are just born into. And I that kind of came out by virtue of the fact that Darcel and I had these things we thought we wanted to do, and somebody told us no. Jim didn't have that problem professionally. He's a white dude, right, Jim? But he did hit some roadblocks because he came out and he was told, a relationship with somebody of the same sex can't work. But he's happily, and 21 years later, happy to say, y'all's wrong. But something else that came out, Jim was in Florida. Darcel and I were so struck by what Terry said, and Jim was in Florida at the time. And I think what we realized about your talk, Terry, is that your odd journey where you ventured into a field where you weren't going to be able to move forward came to that moment at that press conference. And Jim said, well, it's not like the city extended her the hand of kindness and said, please be the lead speaker after this horrific event that you kind of were in the community. They were either avoiding you or you were an afterthought, one of the two. But the fact that the community was so struck, and we talked about the connection of energy last week, Joe, that maybe it's 30 feet, maybe it's the distance between members of a prayer chain, we don't know. But obviously you were brought to that point, Terry, and all of the energies out of that came together in the entire LGBTQ and friendly communities to lift you up at that appointed time that God had already preordained for you.
Wow, Edie. Yeah. Terry, I would love you to use that as your transition, but Jim had his hand up here too. I think he might be sharing exactly that he was there during that time. Jim, go ahead and unmute yourself and share. And then Terry, if you would take us from that into the second segment.
Well, what I want to share is kind of a little bit of that. I had shared with the group that Terry wasn't originally invited to that, and the community was very upset. But also, I wanted to share, and Reverend Terry may not know this, but she made it possible for me and probably others to show that we are a spiritual faith community within the LGBT community. And my mom and I actually watched the Lake Eola vigils and things like that. I'd never watched anything LGBT oriented on TV with my mother. I happened to be in town that weekend for another family issue. But that created a vehicle, for lack of a better way of putting it, so that, and then my mother later on has come to me and asked me to pray with her and for her. So she considers, she knew I was baptized in Baptist church, but I wanted to share that. So thank you, Reverend Terry.
God bless you, Jim. Just look what God can do, right? Through us when we're willing to allow God to use us, even when it's hard, right? But we posed the question earlier in the teach about what, and part of the questions for you to consider, what can we currently say no to such that we can now say yes to something that will make our heart sing? And that sounds so wonderful, but how do you do it? How do you do that? And I'm glad you asked. How do we express our light and not our darkness? There are many religions that try to help us determine that correct path for us individually to take. And I want to use, as we were preparing this, we came up with this example of climbing a mountain, and Lily may go up the left side of the mountain, and Ken may go up the right side of the mountain, and Joe may go up the front side. And of course, I'm going to be on the back end, and we're all going to meet at the top eventually. But we all take a path right up the mountain, regardless of what path we take. Our goal is to make it to the top, right? So how do we get there? How we get there may be different, but they all lead to that same place. And in Hinduism, they use this idea of yogas. These paths are ways to aid us in finding our true, aligned, authentic selves. These paths lead to what they call nirvana, which is that place, I'll say, that makes our heart sing, or it's that peak of the mountaintop, if you will. But these yogas are Hinduism's way of saying that we are each put together differently. We are gifted uniquely. The ways that we are woven uniquely together determines our individual paths. So the scripture lesson said that we were each gifted with something, and they're all different things. Most Western religions attempt to make us all the same. They want to be a melting pot. But Hinduism suggests that we find our own unique way at arriving at our mountaintop experiences. So my understanding is that there are hundreds of yogas in Hinduism, but they all fall under 4 categories. And these are the great yogas that will help us ascertain the best way for us to express our own alignment, whether it be via devotion, truth, meditation, or selfless action. I'll briefly describe each one of these, and then I would encourage you to do, we don't have much time tonight, but I want to encourage you to do a little more research after the class on this. But there are 4 paths to it. The first one you have is, which one do you have, Joe? I'm sorry.
Knowledge.
Knowledge, okay. So jhana is the first yoga. This path of wisdom and knowledge is, it's obtaining spiritual knowledge through action or study or meditation or devotion. The goal here is absolute truth or knowledge. And this kind of path appeals to the philosophical and intellectual temperaments, if you will. And then there's karma, the path of selfless service, of performing works without greed or desire. This action is performed without looking for any fruits of benefit or loss. And the goal here is complete selflessness via action. And this kind of karma, this kind of yoga appeals to an active temperament. And then the third one is Raja yoga. It's the path of meditation. It's that discipline of self-control and mastery of body and mind. It teaches concentration, meditation, breathing, even physical exercise. And it's a state of equanimity of the mind as a natural reaction to all activity. So the goal here is the perfect mind through that path of meditation. And this kind of yoga appeals to the more mystical and scientific temperament. And then the last one is the bhakti yoga. It's the path of love and devotion. This one is the one that speaks to me. It's the spiritual discipline of absolute devotion and love of God. And in it, it teaches prayer and surrender to God at all times. And it teaches us to see and feel God in all people and in all things, to find God in the midst of it. The goal here is pure love via devotion. And this one appeals to the more emotional temperament. And so once we discover our path or paths, maybe one or two of those appeals to you more than the others, perhaps you can decide based on this what you can say no to and then feel good about. One of these yogas may help you get there if you've been struggling to find some kind of verbiage for it, for a way to get to your more aligned, authentic self. So when we were working on the lesson, we all tried to think of people, maybe an example like you all gave, of people that maybe operated outside of their true alignment. And because we had focused on the poem that we read for our session quote, we talked about Marianne Williamson, right? And we talked about, remember a couple years ago when she was running for president and how everything felt off about that and how she so wasn't like everybody else, right, on the stage. We all experienced her misalignment, right? And perhaps you have felt your own misalignment. And so I want to ask you to really think hard about this. What could you possibly now be given the permission to say no to that would give you the freedom to pursue those things that are more in alignment with who you really are? Like Jordan's example and Collis's example, what could, and the others that spoke, what could you say no to that would free you up to do the things that are more in alignment with who you really are? I remember my last week of working in corporate America. I was going to be going to pastor, and a coworker of mine walked by my office and said, "Hey, Terry, how's it going?" And I was like, it should not be this hard. Everything that I was doing those last few weeks, it just seemed absolutely impossible. Corporate America, in that situation, it was hard for me. Ministry, now it's challenging, but it isn't hard. Do you see the difference of challenging versus difficult? Two separate things. But because I was aligned in ministry, it's never hard. It may be challenging, but it's not hard. And so our goal here is to give you, to allow you to give yourself permission to say no to things that you're not good at, so that you can in turn say yes to the things that can and will make your heart sing, right? So I'm going to give you permission. The next time somebody asks you to do something you don't feel particularly gifted to do or passionate about doing or skilled enough perhaps to pull off, when such an incident occurs, you can now respond by saying, "No, I'm not good at that and I wouldn't enjoy it." And so I want you to practice it with me. Everybody unmute yourselves. Everybody get ready.
Unmute.
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 I want to hear everybody. And I want you to practice it with me.
Can we do the accent?
Yeah.
Sure can. The best way.
So Terry, what are we going to say? Tell us first, then we'll all say it together.
Okay, so you're going to say, "No, I'm not good at that, and I wouldn't enjoy it." Say it with me. No,
I'm
not good at that.
Wouldn't enjoy it.
So don't send your pastor to me when you say no to them next time, but I want you to say no when you can. I'm not good at that and I wouldn't enjoy it.
I didn't believe him, Terry. I don't think it was loud enough. I didn't hear it up here.
So we gotta say it louder.
No, I didn't hear it up here.
Everybody scream.
Ready?
No.
No. I'm not good at that.
Enjoy it.
And so now you're released
Talk to
from
Terry.
that burden, right?
I didn't hear him, Terry. I didn't hear him.
Let's call Terry about that.
I didn't hear him. I don't think they meant it, Terry. I don't think you got to them. I don't think
Come
you
on,
got their heart
Joe.
in your hands yet.
Some of us live in
Yeah,
apartment, folks.
No, Joe, I'm not good at that, and I won't enjoy it.
Jane, you didn't have the accent nearly right.
Yeah.
Hey,
Canadian Jane Ann almost got Terry's Southern accent right. There you go. Yeah. Oh,
love it.
Terry, man, my friend. Thank you. Can we unmute and go ahead and give Terry some real live Sanctuary Online love?
Love you.
Oh, you're so good tonight, Terry, and good to us. I will tell you, I know many of you who have taken CLM or even the facilitators that are on here, you'll remember this course very differently. And we wanted to remind you that even last week, although that course was a little more lined up with what you really experience in CLM, this one we had to do a little bit of work with, a little more redesign. So God bless you, Terry, for going through those redesign sessions with the team. And I will tell you, I want to make clear that you all know that you're getting about 1/3 of each course. Okay, so this is not CLM. This really is a taste of, and it's not a taste of CLM, it's only a taste of one of our courses. And so we just want to make that really clear, because as we go through this and as we receive your feedback, we're actually listening for, wow, do we have to break a few of these courses into 2? Do we have to create more? We're just not sure, but we're listening. So for those of you who are, it's brand new, I hope you're finding value. Most of you who gave us feedback said you did find value in spending the time with us last week. And also, CLM is also about the work you put in. So if you are not getting the emails, please stay on with us tonight and hook up with Barb, because I will tell you one little story of, I don't know which time we were teaching, Cheryl, in Toronto, but there was a person who I really cared about, and he came about halfway through, maybe a little more than halfway through, and he said, Joe, this isn't doing anything for me. It's not working. And Sandra knows this. My loving pastoral self, I always breathe in, so I don't have my inside voice be my outside voice right away. Often gets me in trouble along the years. But I looked at him lovingly, truly lovingly, and I said, it's not working because you're not working it. You're not doing your homework. You're not doing the reading. You're not doing the journaling. You're not sharing in small group, and you're not sharing in large group. So you can't, CLM doesn't work passively. It's a journey, my friends. It's a conversation. Most of that conversation is you with you. Okay? It's you with you. It's you with your understandings. It's you answering the questions we ask you. It's you with your own understanding of God. And then it's you in conversation with others, because there's so much me too out there. It's so wonderful when we find that someone has a similar experience, right? And we can resonate with that person, maybe bounce things off them. If that last week, it all the way through, and it took the song and drawing and working with paper body, and you had a breakthrough in the first time, right? And we just want to be really clear that we hope this is valuable. We believe it's valuable, and it's truly just a taste of the true depth of CLM. So all that said, once again, Terry, thank you so much for coming in and for bringing session 2 to us. We really blessed, one, by your teaching, and 2, we are so honored to introduce you as that person who was there at Pulse, who had taken every bit of what your off-path time in corporate America had taught you. And the thing that your story deeply moved us this week was, had you not made that courageous call, Terry, to become more aligned, in time to gather the skills that you needed to be the person that stood in those press conferences, that spoke up to power, that said, this is the community and I am their pastor. We are their church. All week that has stayed with me. I've asked the question, what if you hadn't chosen? What if you hadn't had the courage to do the work of alignment? You couldn't see ahead to know that was coming. But all of us now can look back and say, thank God it was you. You were the right person in the right time, and you done all the work to be there and to be a blessing and to give life and to hold a community that needed you in that moment. So my friends, this curriculum does that work if you do that work. So if you're not getting the readings, if you're not getting the homework, if you're not doing the journaling, this is a tiny bit of encouragement to push yourself a little bit. And I'm gonna move us into homework tonight. And you have been sent this homework, so I know that you have it. And yet those of you that don't, please, we're gonna leave the Zoom room open. I'll close the recording in a few minutes, but we'll leave the Zoom room open. Please don't leave without connecting with Barb and making sure we have everyone who wants to be lined up and getting the emails that you actually are doing that. Okay, so real briefly, yes, I got a question. Yes.
Yeah, it's Barb.
Hi, Barb.
They actually didn't receive this homework. They will get it in next week's email. So you'll go over it tonight, and then it'll
the
be
pre-work,
attached
Barb.
to.
Yeah, let me go over the slides and I'll show you what I mean here, because what you did get was kind of the in-class work, and we do half of the work that we send you in class in the breakout, and then we do a little bit more called post work. So you got questions 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the pre-work that was actually the work that you did in the breakouts. And then we have some journaling, which really is just questions 5 and 6. And then we added a little bit from Terry's last bit of teaching. Based on what you've learned about being an aligned self last week, physical, emotional, and energetic alignment, what you've learned about the 4 great yogas, what you've learned about saying no to, so you can say yes. What we want to do is have you kind of see what path of the great yogas, knowledge, action, meditation, devotion, might be where you believe you would find the most joy. Terry's been saying how to make your heart sing. And we'd love it if you take some time to journal about a couple times in your life when you felt like you were on path, right? You were in alignment. And also it's helpful, back to Care of the Soul, who am I not? Journal about a couple times when you knew you weren't on that path. And again, we're not calling that time bad. Please hear that. We're just calling it not on path, right? And again, like I said, when I was listening to Terry's story this week, I know that the things you learned during that time in corporate America, Terry, served you, right? As you became, lined up with your calling. So we're not calling that time bad. It's just kind of a consciousness again, an awareness that I'm going to bloom where I'm planted, but I'm not, where I know I could be in an aligned state. Now, the homework that you didn't get is, so the post work is these questions, and we're going to give you an email midweek, probably Friday, and it's going to have pre-work for next week. And there's going to be something called a social location exercise. Not sure if many of you have ever done one of these things, but it's going to ask you, it's going to be a series of questions about where you come from. And you are going to share that in class, in session next week in the small group. So we want to just allow you to do something that you'll understand next week, raise your water line a bit, and answer the questions in a way that you'd be comfortable in sharing them with a small group. Okay? Yes, it'll be in confidence, but we just want to share with you. When we ask you to answer these questions, it's called a social location exercise. We just want to say you'll probably be being asked to share those answers in a small group. All right, so just a care. And then that same email will have breakout room questions and homework again. So midweek Friday, you should receive an email from us. Okay, if you don't, once again, you can always reach out to us at talktous@sanctuaryinthewoods.com, And there's a gang of us that always cruise that email bucket. So one of us will pick it up and get back with you and make sure you're ready for next week. And the social location is a pretty in-depth pre-work. It's probably the most in-depth pre-work we've given you so far. It takes about 15 minutes for you to answer. So I want you to not open it up at 5 till next week. Love you, but I know you, okay? And I've been you. So there you go. Tonight, we're going to finish with our paper body activity, which we shared last week that we'll do each evening. We sent you the paper body again. It's nice if you have the same paper body each time because you kind of develop a little relationship with it over the 4 sessions. And last week, we asked you to kind of spend a moment with your paper body listening to the first verse of this song that we're going to play. And to try and think, man, where is that most aligned self in my body, and to write a star or draw a star on your body. Tonight, we're going to ask you to do the same thing. I want you to listen to the words of this song, maybe even, this is a courageous step, sing them to yourself, to your body, to us, the second verse. You can be on mute. We actually highly suggest it. But just spend a moment with your hands on your paper body, noticing that alignment, that most integrated self. And we're asking you tonight, after listening to Terry, is there an area that I know I have giftedness in? And where might that reside in my body? I always use Cheryl's example as a great listener, but that area of giftedness where Cheryl knows she feels a need in the world is in her listening. You might be a teacher. It might be in your head. You might be an adventurer. It might be in your feet, anything at all, but just spend some time. And then Terry, back to question 2 is kind of Terry's. What's one thing, not the one thing, but what's one thing that makes your heart sing? Makes you feel like you really are expressing that fully aligned, authentic self. And again, where might that reside in and through and in your body? And you can write, you can draw, it's your body. You never have to show these, except Terry, do you have yours available? We forgot here. Terry, hold on one second, because I want you to get an example again, how you're getting a taste of self. But Terry pulled out her paper body the other day and showed us from when she was in class. And if you know Terry, this will make a lot of sense for you. And Terry, as she shared, her yoga is straight up devotion and love of Jesus. Terry, I'm going to stop my share for a minute and put you on spotlight, because if you know Terry, and you're on mute, honey, this is the actual paper body that you drew, right, when you were in class?
Yes, this was when I took CLM in 2011. This was my paper body.
So as you can see, you're getting a taste. This is a little deeper work that we do with the paper body when you actually take CLM, when we do it in the fall. Thank you, Terry. That is so you. I could pick that one out of a crowd and know that it's you, my friend. All right, loves, I'm going to play the song. I'm going to put the words up. You can again go on mute. And if you like, you can even go off camera. It's up to you. When the song is done, it's about a 5-minute song, 2 verses. Then there's a little bit of an instrumental, and then there's 3 more verses at the end. You can stick around. You can blessedly sign off. Either way, just have a wonderful, wonderful week. And we thank you again so much for being here. I will flip the slides between the instructions right here and the words, just so you go back and forth, all right? Thank you for coming. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, my friends. We love you. We appreciate you. We send you off with health and healing, integrated selves. And as Terry said, say no a couple times this week. See how good it makes you feel to say yes, what you should have been saying yes to for a long time. We'll leave the room open for half an hour. Enjoy the conversation. Enjoy your week. Stay safe out there. Love you.
Love you. Good night.
Love you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good night, everyone.